Well, let's get some analysis now with Dr. Malcolm Davis, a senior analyst in defence strategy and national security at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. He joins us now from the Australian capital, Canberra. Really good to have you back with us, Malcolm. The talks that are happening in Saudi Arabia now between the US and Russia mark a dramatic shift in relations between the two countries, because we know under the Biden administration, after Russia launched that invasion of Ukraine, the Biden policy was essentially to freeze out Moscow from diplomatic relations. What are you expecting from this meeting in Riyadh? Is it going to lay the groundwork for negotiations for a peace between Ukraine and Russia, do you think?
Look, at best, it lays the groundwork for what I would call peace in our time. In other words, a Munich type 1938 type agreement that basically pauses the war, gives Russia time to regroup and rearm before it launches the war again. What you're seeing is the Trump administration completely capitulate to Moscow in terms of giving key concessions before the negotiations even really begin. So they've made clear that Ukraine will not be permitted to join NATO. They've made clear that Ukraine will have to give up territory. There's even discussion today about the possibility of the US pulling military forces out of the Baltic states. So this is essentially a capitulation, and Moscow will play them like a violin. And essentially, I think what you'll see coming out of this is a situation where Putin emerges with everything he wants, gives nothing in return, and Ukraine is at the mercy of the next Russian attack in a year or two.
In the lead up to his meeting in Saudi Arabia, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio sought to allay fears, saying in an interview that Europe and Ukraine would be part of any real negotiations towards a negotiated peace between Russia and Ukraine. Do you believe that to be the case? Is Washington under Donald Trump really interested in fully involving Ukraine and Europe in any potential talks?
I believe that they've made clear that they're not. It may be Marco Rubio saying that. He's a statesman and a diplomat, and I think I have greatest respect for Marco Rubio. But when you listen to Trump and you listen to Vance and you listen to others in that elite group within the Oval Office, they are making it very clear that what they want is a rapid end to the war at any cost. And I think that the risk here is that Trump will basically say to Rubio and others like others in the Trump administration, you will deliver Putin what he wants. So I think that I am very pessimistic about where this is heading, and not just in terms of the implications for Ukraine, but the implications for Europe's security in general, because Putin will see any peace settlement coming out of this as an opportunity to regroup and rearm, and then either launch the war against Ukraine again to take more territory, or potentially threaten other areas of Europe, including the Baltic states. And so I do think we should not be seeing this in a positive light. That would be the wrong thing to do.
In the meantime, we've seen European leaders scramble over the past few days, both at the Munich Security Forum and in Paris over the weekend, to come up with their response to the diplomatic activity that's happening between the US and Russia. We've had Volodymyr Zelensky call for a European army to finally be established. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has also said that he's prepared to put boots on the ground in Ukraine if it came to that. Is this a long overdue awakening of European leaders, the fact that they can no longer rely on the status quo, that being the US stepping in to essentially solve the Ukrainian issue?
Absolutely, and I think this is the one positive thing in all of this horrible situation. You are seeing now the European countries actually opening their eyes, realizing the threat that is in front of them from an aggressive and expansionist Russia, where Moscow sees the Ukraine war as but one campaign in a wider war. Already, Russia is waging hybrid war against NATO even now, with sabotage of undersea cables and other locations around Europe. And so I think that what you'll see coming out of this peace in our time negotiation that's occurring now is an even more aggressive Russia that's prepared to challenge NATO's eastern frontier. There's talk, for example, of Russia moving 150,000 troops into Belarus right up against the Polish border. So I think what you will see is the European states starting to get their act together in terms of preparing for the possibility of war with Russia within this decade. And that will require a dramatic boost in defence spending, potentially up to 5% or greater. It will require a willingness to commit forces to protect NATO, and that could include also protecting Ukraine on the ground. And that's where Keir Starmer's discussion and Macron's discussion about boots on the ground really come important, because if you have European forces in Ukraine, it makes it a little bit more difficult for Putin then to restart the war at a time of his choosing once he's managed to regroup his forces.
Okay, Malcolm Davis, we will have to leave it there, but thanks as always for joining us on the program.